everybody. Welcome to another episode of That Early Childhood Nerd. I'm Heather Bernt-Santy. My guest is Rae Pica. I just promised her I was ready and hit record and then totally forgot how to talk. So we're off to a roaring start. Hi, Rae. Thank you for being here.
Hi, sweetie. I'm glad I'm not the only one who does that sort of thing. Brain bubbles. I call them brain bubbles.
Right? I just keep telling myself people still listen, so they must think that's just part of the charm of the show when I get all
It's your
uh,
shtick.
it's my shtick. Yes, exactly. Yes. So glad you're here. Rae, tell folks about yourself in case this is the first time they've listened or they haven't stumbled across your work yet. What should people know about you?
Well, I've been around for 112 years, so most people have
They
stumbled
probably have
across me
stumbled
one
across your
way.
work.
I
Yeah.
don't know. Yeah, I mean, I started, 44 years ago in the early
Hmm.
childhood field, and it was just I was the movement lady who went into the local preschools and childcare centers, and it just grew from there until I became, consultant doing um, trainings and then keynote speeches, and I've always wanted to be a writer. I mean, I've been a
Hmm.
writer since I was in fourth grade. So
Hmm.
um,
Yeah.
this book coming out is my 23rd.
I was just gonna ask what's your total now?
Yeah, this may
Yeah.
be it. This may be it. I say that every time,
I
but
was gonna say that sounds familiar, Rae.
I think I might be telling the truth now. I don't
Yeah.
know. I'm getting
Yeah.
old.
Yeah. I was in the classroom, my early childhood classroom at the college, and going through cabinets and stuff. Because we're hoarders in early
For
childhood.
sure.
We've
Oh
got
yeah,
stuff from
yeah.
forever. And I found a textbook that I didn't realize you'd written about movement.
Oh,
And I thought I knew all the books, but there's a,
oh.
a movement textbook that I found.
Yeah,
And
experiences in movement and
yeah,
music. It got
yeah,
all the way up to the fifth edition. But then, sadly, there were fewer and fewer courses.
yep,
That I don't know what they're talking about in
yeah,
teacher prep these days,
yeah.
but they're not
Well,
talking about movement and music.
I can
And
tell
like,
you.
yeah,
I'll tell
well,
you off mic why that's
so, it's
who I
still
blame for
hanging
that.
in there,
Yeah.
but the royalties, the annual royalties, make you want to weep.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I just wanted to mention it because I mean, I know that textbooks have changed a lot. And just why I don't usually use typical textbooks in my class anymore.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. I think that's great.
Yeah, yeah. So anyway, well, thanks for all the work that you've been doing for
Thank
that
you.
time. Um,
Yeah,
and I think this might be the fourth, fifth time you've been on the show. Like it's
I don't
been,
know. I love being on your show. So
yeah, yeah, good, yay. So the new book coming out in October is called Why Play? How to Make Play an Essential Part of Early Education, um, from Teachers College Press.
mhm.
And Rae just told me before we were recording, I don't have it yet, but we'll have it by the time this episode comes out. There's going to be a special order link for people who want to order the book based on
20% discount.
this
Woohoo.
conversation. That's amazing. I love that.
Teachers
Um,
College Press has been
they're
amazing.
really good. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, they're so good. And Sarah's so fun, isn't she?
Yes. Yeah, she's adorable. And she uses
Yeah.
bad words too, which I
For those listening and not watching, Ray's referring to my shirt, which is a list of things I do, and the first one is I say bad words.
I love it.
Yeah, okay, so I want to read just a quote from the very beginning of the introduction and let you just talk about that a little bit because I think that'll get us into the why
Mhm.
behind, it's another book about play. There's a reason we have to keep writing about play and
Yeah.
talking about play. So you said the sad truth is that children are being allowed so little time to engage in play that they're losing a skill that should inherently be part of them, something through which nature intended them to learn about themselves and the world around them. And this is the piece that I haven't really heard said before in a book, and this is why I chose this paragraph. So then you write, although the words are rarely said aloud, productivity and achievement have come to be valued above free time, even in early childhood. Um,
And that's sad.
it is very sad. I was recording with some other folks yesterday about a Lily and Cats article,
Oh,
and um, someone drew a comparison to a boss managing employees and the way that we operate early childhood now. And so then I was reviewing this stuff last night to prepare for today, and I was like, yeah, that's what Ray's talking about here.
yeah. It's just unacceptable what has
Mhm.
happened to early childhood in general and early childhood education in particular.
Mhm.
Of course, there's a great big truck unloading something right now. I don't know
Oh,
if
I don't
you
hear.
hear it out there. Okay, good,
Okay,
because
good.
he's banging things around.
Oh, no.
Timing is everything.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, it's we should not have to be advocating for play. We should not have to be
Yeah.
advocating for children to be allowed to be children.
Yeah.
It literally makes me crazy. I mean, I just
Mhm.
can't I just
Yeah.
can't abide it.
Yeah, I think about the childhood piece, right? I'm not opposed to children learning things. I'm not opposed to
You're always learning things.
helping, support their development or whatever. Of course, I'm not. Um, but there's been such a shift that we think because we have them in these settings that we've made to look like school.
Yeah.
That's the only thing that matters now is school-like behavior, sitting and listening and being very passive. And uh, that's a big piece, regardless of which type of play I was reading in your book, because each chapter is a different type of play.
Yeah.
Um, the emphasis on movement and getting children out of these sedentary situations that we forced them into is important to you.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So there are two parts to my mission these
Uh-huh.
days. One is to ensure that children get to be children, which is the most ridiculous sentence
Right.
ever
Can you
said.
believe we have to say that out
Yeah, I
loud?
know.
Yes. Yeah.
And that child development guides all our practices with them, all our interactions with them.
Hmm.
If we just keep child development in mind, then we're not going to insist that they sit for 20 minutes when they're 1 year old
Oh, man.
and these are true stories,
Yes.
they're sitting for 20 minutes memorizing flashcards of
Yeah.
letters and numbers.
Yeah. Or getting in trouble for not sitting for 20
Oh,
minutes.
absolutely.
Yeah.
They're one, for heaven's sakes. They're
Hmm.
one.
Hmm.
You know, I'm always likening it to the young of other species because nature intended the young of all species, pretty much, including the human species, to learn through play, to learn
Hmm.
and grow and develop through play.
Hmm.
And I imagine trying to get, you know, a kitten. I just introduced you to my 3-year-old, and he had the zoomies this morning with this wild look in his,
It's
and I'm
so
not gonna,
funny, but so annoying when it's that early.
yeah. But I'm not going to tell him sit still. It's
Hmm.
ridiculous, and it's just as ridiculous to tell young children to sit still
Hmm.
because developmentally they're not supposed to, and
Yeah,
they're unable to.
right. Yeah,
Yeah,
and I've been thinking lately, um, and actually, because I'm trying to write a book too, and so when I was writing
you are
yesterday,
writing a book. You've
I am
tried. You
writing a
are
book. You're
writing
right.
a
You're
book.
right. You're right. Thank you. But I was writing about how these kinds of expectations impact the adults too.
Hmm.
And then I flipped and it's on page 2 of your of your introduction. You say the children are suffering, but so too are the early childhood educators and the profession itself.
Yeah.
So I was really thinking about, when we spend our whole days trying to get every child in the group to be compliant and to be the same, that's developmentally impossible to do.
Hmm.
And if that's how we measure our success as a teacher,
We're screwed.
we're screwed. Yes, exactly. And so I thought that's probably maybe one of the things you were saying here, but will you talk a little bit about how we'll get back to the children for sure, but let's
Sure.
talk about the adults who are in the space too. How's that?
Well, gee, why do you think so many of them are leaving the field? I
Yeah.
mean, they're miserable. They're being required to demand things of the children that are developmentally inappropriate, and they
Hmm.
know in their hearts it's developmentally inappropriate, and
Hmm.
they see what it's doing to the children, and they went into the field because they love young children,
Right.
and so making them miserable wasn't part of the plan.
Yeah.
um and you think about psychology 101 and trusting teachers to know what they're doing,
Hmm.
to use their own wisdom and knowledge and common sense, and we're just we're forcing them into boxes as well,
Yeah.
and the people making these decisions, pardon me, I'm going to use bad words,
Okay.
don't know crap about
Oh.
early childhood. They don't they
Hmm.
don't they're
Right.
they haven't taken child development
Right.
courses, you know.
Yeah, sometimes they maybe have educational psychology course stuff. I've seen that in some curriculum development, people's credentials, like
Mhm.
the kind of box set kind of things. And that's not the same as child
No,
development.
no, it's not the same. And early childhood and early childhood education, it's it's very specific. It's
Uh-huh.
very different. It's very unique and wonderful.
Yeah.
And people who feel they know education think that they know early childhood
Yeah.
education, but it's a whole different animal
Right.
because the little ones are a whole different animal, you know.
Mhm.
And it's think about, and I always start to cry when when I do think about it, how teeny tiny that part of the lifespan is, and so much of our later joy
Mhm.
and enjoyment of life and experience of life
Mhm.
is based on that teeny tiny period of
Yeah.
the lifespan. And what happens when we start them off miserable?
Yeah.
It's really unbearable to think about. It really is.
Yes. Yeah, and that's such a big piece of it. We do so much of it in the name of getting them ready for school, but for so many children, we're teaching them that school is a miserable place to be.
Yeah,
Or school is really a lot harder for you. And or already, well, the adults in the school don't like me because I can't do the things they want me to
I
do.
know. You start
And
out
that,
feeling like a failure.
yeah, that's not getting them ready to have
No,
a good school experience or a
no, it
healthy
isn't.
school
And
experience.
when was it determined, I wonder,
Hmm.
that school had to be a joyless place?
Yeah.
You know, there's literally research now,
Yeah.
that tells us that joy is related to learning,
Yeah.
you know. Um, Judy Willis, neuroscientist and educator, says, when the fun stops, so too does the learning. And
Hmm.
it's true. It's true.
Yeah, and I know that you've got that here in the book. I'm not sure, where it is in here, but
Me
I
either.
want to I want to keep going with that a little bit because that um Bev Boss was writing about that more than 20 years ago. She had an article in Exchange called Joy in Early Childhood Programs. And the
Mm.
first sentence is like the word joy is not one you often hear. And here we
No.
are now. I think that was published maybe in the early 90s. And here we are in 2024. And it's even less of a consideration
Oh yeah,
for children
absolutely.
to feel
I
that
mean,
joy.
some of the things I quote, it makes me sick to think about how long ago they were written.
Yeah.
Um, I can't remember Alfred North Whitehead or Whitehead
Okay.
North.
Yeah. Yeah.
He was talking about guaranteeing that teachers will come to grief as soon as they forget that their pupils have bodies. And I
Mm,
think that was written in 1929. Hello.
yeah. 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 We're a stubborn bunch, aren't we? In
Yes,
early
yes, we
childhood.
refuse to learn
We're
from the past.
Yeah, we're either like really stubborn or just so kind of disempowered that we don't know what to do about it. And I think that's why books like yours are good for
Hmm.
the field.
Well, I remember reading, I don't know what edition it was of David L. Kine's. It might have been his 25th anniversary, The Hurried Child.
Yeah.
And, 250,000 copies of that had been sold. And, what does he say in the beginning? That things have just gotten worse. So,
Yeah.
you keep trying, you keep writing the books, you keep doing these kinds of
Yeah.
interviews and spouting all over
Yeah.
the place. And you just have to
S-
keep trying.
Right, right. And keep being like I have a mug that just says idealist on it, and I catch a lot of flack for that at work. And I was like, yeah, have to be, right? Especially if you have to be an optimist and you have to be an idealist
Yeah.
in early childhood right now, especially, I think.
Yeah. Or you'll just up and quit.
Right, yeah. So I want to stay on joy for a little while.
Okay.
Um, uh, and I found, if the page where you talk about joy wasn't very far, I found where you're talking about Judy Willis, and she uses the phrase like we're scrubbing it. We're scrubbing joy from early childhood settings or from learning. And that's intentional, right? When I think about we're
Yes.
scrubbing joy, it's almost like if we see a child having fun we don't believe that you're doing what you should be doing to teach them and get them ready.
Right, right, and it's almost as though our intention is to make them miserable.
Yeah.
It's like, what is that about?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and and sadly, there are early childhood professionals who, um, I'm not sure why they went into the field, but they don't seem to love
Mhm.
children, and when a child behaves like a child,
Yeah.
you know, they get in trouble for that.
Yeah. Well, I think we have this romanticized notion. Children are sweet and cute and they say the darndest things, right? And they're going to hug me and they're going to give me acceptance automatically. Um, and those are the children that they love. When I was interviewing, when I was a center director and I would do interviews and people would start with, well, I just love children. That's who they're talking about, right? And then they get
Yeah,
in the classroom and there's the ones who, um, have runny, crusty noses all the time, or who don't sit for 20 minutes when you want them to sit for 20 minutes,
yeah,
or whose bodies need to move in big ways in your small space.
mhm,
And suddenly, uh, it's not what you thought it was.
right.
But you don't leave. Like that's the piece. Like if you're that unhappy, sure, it's not the money that
It
keeps
isn't.
you that keep not me, not my experience anyway. So I don't, why don't you, why is it so hard if you're as an adult feeling joyless? Not that I'm trying to drive people, I know we have a short, but I do wonder, what keeps you here
I
when
wonder
there's
too.
so little joy?
Um, I mean, I know that the little ones are accepting, and that's
Yeah.
compelling,
Mhm.
right? And then maybe it's that stubbornness you referred to.
Yeah.
I studied to do this. Damn it, I'm going to do
Oh,
it.
there's that too. Yeah, I forget about that piece. Of course, I'm teaching them, so I would have forget about their studying that I'm teaching them in their college classes. Oh my goodness. But I think I've referred a few times lately to the Lego Foundation's work
Hmm.
about neuroscience and play, and they've got identified 5 characteristics of a playful that make an experience playful and conducive to you know, brain growth and learning. And joyful's one of them. Joyful's one of the 5 most important things. Um, in research is backing that. There's evidence to back that.
Yeah, well, if you watch a child who's really engaged in something, creating with Legos, you
Yeah.
know, building blocks, putting a
Mhm.
puzzle together, trying to figure out why some things float in the water table and why some
Yeah.
things sink,
Yeah.
um, there's just inherent joy in that. You
Right.
could see it in their faces, you know. It's wonder, it's joy, it's curiosity, it's all the things that are supposed to describe early childhood.
Yeah.
And why you would look at that and decide that that's not a good thing, I don't know.
Right, yeah. Well, I think, I do want to give those people on the front lines the grace of acknowledging that there are pressures from everywhere
Oh,
coming
everywhere.
after them,
Yeah,
and pushing
from
them to be this
parents,
way.
from
Yeah,
policy makers,
yeah,
from administrators,
yeah.
absolutely.
But ultimately, we are the ones who can create the change. We can't wait for a new curriculum to come down that's gonna say, okay, you can move and play, all the children need to now. And we want to see joy every day. Or if we do, it's gonna be like 9:30's joy time. But wrap it up
From
by
9:30 to
9:45.
9:40 to experience joy,
Yeah, yeah.
then it's time to get back to the science of reading or whatever.
Yes. Oh man, don't even. Indiana's one of the states that has adopted a law that has, made it the law that we have to
Yeah,
change everything.
just got goosebumps, just got goosebumps.
Yeah, yeah. So what do I want to go to next? I'm jumping around now, and you've got
That's
chapters, like
okay.
I said, about all different kinds of play. I'm jumping to the cooperative play chapter here.
Oh, I
Um,
love that
yeah,
chapter.
because you said something again that we don't say out loud often enough. You're talking about, you were having a conversation with someone who said, competition is important. Cooperation isn't important because it's a dog eat dog world out there, and these kids are going to have to compete for everything for every day of their lives.
Yeah, it was a physical education teacher who
Yeah,
said he
yeah.
had mostly scrubbed competition from his program,
Hmm.
but not completely because children are going to have to compete every day for their lives.
Yeah.
You
I was
know,
thinking about my life. I don't compete very much.
I play Words with Friends.
right, but me too, yeah, but I'm not like competitive, like it's not
Yeah.
a, it's very process oriented. It's not a product. I
Yep.
if I lose, I start another game.
Yeah.
If I
Yeah.
win, I love it.
I do
But
like to win. Yep,
yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. Yeah, we
But
play, my husband and I play cribbage with this other couple every week, and it's fun and we want to win, of course, but it's about the process of playing the game for us.
because
Yeah.
there's joy in that.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
It's
exactly.
fun. It's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. I should mention, you did mention that every chapter is a different kind of
Yeah.
play. And when it was actually Teachers College Press, and to answer why another book about play,
Uh-huh.
approached me and asked me to write a book about play, and I hesitated for a long time. I thought,
Uh-huh.
well, I've read some really good books about play. What on earth could I have to say? But I had just finished writing Spark a Revolution in
Hmm.
Early Education, and
Yeah.
it was all about advocacy. And I thought, well, I could advocate for all these different kinds of play in each chapter. And
Yeah.
so the cooperative
Yeah.
play is something that I feel very passionately
Yeah.
about because, I mean, when we think about they're going to have to compete every day of their lives, you imagine them out there with, wearing armor and brandishing swords. I mean,
Yeah.
what is what does that mean?
Right.
I can't think of an example of them competing every
Right.
day of their lives. As I say in the book, there's
I mean, other than grades in elementary school, the
right, and
the
it's not
places
like there are
we
only
force
six to
them to
go
compete.
around.
Yeah. Yeah, everybody gets a grade.
Yeah, it's no even
Yeah.
only six A's to go around,
Yeah.
and you
Yeah.
got to fight,
Hmm.
tooth and nail to get one.
Yeah, yeah. So talk about cooperative play a little bit. Like why do you love to talk about cooperative play so much?
Well, when I started thinking about this, I realized that there are a lot more opportunities for cooperation over the course of a lifetime than
Uh-huh.
for
Uh-huh.
competition.
Right.
Um, I'm not quite sure why we think life is so competitive because, oh,
Mm-hmm.
sure, you do have to compete for a slot in at university.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it's not hand-to-hand combat, and you don't
Hmm.
know who you're going up against. The only
Right.
thing you can do is bring your best self.
Uh-huh.
And I don't think getting to be your best self, is a result of constantly engaging in competition.
Right.
Um, Same thing with getting a job. It's the exact same thing. You just bring your best self.
Mm-hmm.
But cooperative behavior, we do need to cooperate with family members, life partners, community members,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
coworkers, church members, whatever it is. I mean, there are so many opportunities and there's so much need for
Mm-hmm.
cooperation and collaboration in life.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't prepare children for that. We play musical chairs where there's one child left and
Yeah.
everybody else is a quote unquote loser.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because that's supposed to be preparing them for this dog
Right.
dog world.
Right.
And
My husband and I talk about this a lot, mostly in terms of like sports or games, playground games when we were little. Because I was a year younger than everybody in my class and also really small for my age. So anytime it was like Red Rover or dodgeball
oh,
or
dodgeball.
any of those PE games, I was just at everybody's mercy. Like I could have been, had a competitive mindset as much as I could, but so for me it felt punitive. The competition felt punitive for
Of
reasons I
course.
couldn't control.
And I want to
Uh,
ask
yeah.
you,
Yeah, yeah.
how did it feel to lose all the time?
I think it just wasn't fun to play anymore. Like I don't remember it being like, oh, I'm a real loser. I think I was
Yeah,
kind of always aware that it was just because they were bigger than me and stronger than
yeah,
me. But it made me not want to do it.
yeah,
And it made me really dread the class where I was forced to do it and sort of isolate on the playground.
yeah.
Because I just didn't want to do those cooperative games that were really competitive. The group games, I guess I'll
Yeah,
say.
no, those are really
Um,
competitive.
yeah, so I just, even as an adult, I still think about that.
Yeah.
And how, how hard would it have been for the adults around there to have been like, wait a minute, there's something here that we could tweak.
It's a mindset that they're stuck in, that they were
Yeah.
stuck in, absolutely, I don't know. I don't see the world as dog eat dog.
No, me neither.
Yeah.
Parts
I
of it probably, but you can choose, right?
Yes.
Right? Whether you go
Yes.
into that part of it or this part of it.
Yeah, and cooperation falls under the umbrella of kindness and, developing empathy and all
Hmm.
those things that we
Yeah,
want from
perspective
human beings.
taking.
Oh,
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. When children have more success by working together,
Hmm.
I mean, think about what that means. Looking at ideas that are different from yours and
Hmm.
accepting that. I mean,
Yeah.
that's all good stuff.
Right.
We don't focus on that in childhood,
Right.
and those are skills that need to be developed just like, anything else in early
Hmm.
childhood. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm a big fan of cooperative activities and games.
Yeah. Yeah. What are some of your favorites?
Well,
I know
speaking of
you've got some listed in the book, but
yeah,
just like when you think
s-
about,
speaking of musical chairs, cooperative musical chairs is
uh-huh,
one of my
then it's just
favorites.
fun and laughing and
Oh
yeah,
my gosh,
movement.
yeah. I mean, first of all, if the children are used to traditional musical chairs, when that music starts, they're not going anywhere. They're standing by that chair and nope, nope,
That's
this
true.
is mine, this is mine, this is mine.
That's right.
So you have to convince them nobody's going to, have to sit against the
Uh-huh.
wall and watch everybody else have fun.
Oh man, yeah.
Um, so with cooperative musical chairs, the rules are pretty much the same. You take one chair away with every round, but the
Hmm.
challenge is different. You have to find a way to share the
The
remaining chairs,
chairs.
even with just one.
Yeah.
And you know, they'll try to pile on top of each other, and you validate that and ask them to find another way with the next round, next
Uh-huh.
game. Um, if they all get one big toe up on the chair, they found a way to succeed at the challenge. But Heather, my favorite one that still gives me goosebumps is I saw one child sit and the rest of the children linked hands with that child, formed a human chain connecting them to
Oh
the
wow.
chair. And I just think that is the way life should be,
Right. Right.
and these children were demonstrating it.
Yeah.
Um,
And I'm not a super fan. In fact, I'm very much the opposite of a super fan of thinking about justifying what we do in early childhood based on the return on investment someone else gets from them down the road.
yeah,
But I know that, in career skills or whatever, getting kids career ready is meaningful to some people. And what you're describing, this cooperative uh ethos rather than the competitive selfish. I mean, competition forces you to be selfish,
it
right?
does.
Because
Yeah.
it's your survival.
Yeah.
Um, when we think about what employers are saying they want now,
Yes.
it's the cooperative play stuff that
Yeah,
they're
they're
saying they want now.
looking for employees who are able to engage in teamwork, and they're not seeing it. They're actually
Mhm.
spending a lot of money building those skills.
And
So,
pressuring early childhood policy. I mean, yeah, yeah, they are.
yeah, but if they pressure them to do cooperative stuff, I'm okay with that.
Right. Well,
You
that's,
know?
that it's that classic case of they think they know um what will happen, but it's not really doesn't really work that way
Yeah,
most
well,
of the time because they're not.
so in terms of what will happen, we have no ideas with some of the careers these
Yeah,
children are going to be engaging in because everything's changing so quickly. So the one skill that that they will need is problem solving and
right.
engaging in cooperative activities.
Yeah.
I mean, look what I just
And
described,
curiosity.
problem
Yeah.
solving,
Hmm. For
absolutely.
sure.
And then we take a game like uh, Hello, Simon Says.
Yeah.
I years and years ago, I heard a teacher talking to another teacher about how this one little girl just cried and cried and cried because she was eliminated from Simon Says, and I thought that doesn't seem right,
Yeah.
Something about that is bugging me.
Right.
But there were many things actually about that bug me. So,
Uh-huh.
I mean, it's not rocket science. With Simon Says, instead of one group you have two circles, two lines, and if a child moves without Simon's permission, and
Hmm.
you do want to, it's about active learning and body part identification.
Hmm.
So, I
Hmm.
mean, active listening, I should say.
Yeah.
So you've got, uh, and science with those
Uh-huh.
two goals, right?
Yeah.
Um, So if a child moves without sign's permission, he or she just goes from one line or circle to the other. And the
Mhm.
important part about that is that they get to keep practicing,
Right,
because
right,
the
right,
children who most need the help with active listening and body part identification are the first to be eliminated.
right.
Where's the
And
lesson in that?
exactly. And that's another example of a place where we can't just go on assumptions. We have to understand child development, right? If a child's not at an age or hasn't shown us individually that they have that kind of impulse control yet, Simon Says is going to be
Mhm.
really defeating for them.
Yeah, yeah.
Because it's also impulse control. But if, we've got an age that we see has been is ready to practice it, because right, we need practice with these skills, right? It's not, oh, I think on Thursday they're going to wake up with self-control and impulse control, and then we'll be ready to just have the most successful run of Simon Says ever.
Yeah,
But we
because
can start practicing it.
and what do we know in early childhood, about the importance of repetition?
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah. Yeah. So the other kind of play I wanted to ask you or talk about is construction play, which I think we all identify with blocks, but and different, of course, building materials. But you talk about deconstruction being a part of this play too.
well, I talk about it only because the wonderful people who wrote the books about block play talk about it.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
There's as much, power and as much to learn, I guess, from knocking things down as and one example of that was after the Twin Towers came down, the children were
Oh,
building with blocks and then knocking them down. And that was
yeah,
a social emotional thing that, that they needed to experience. Um, yeah, I also talk about the fact that uh, there's no way building a tower of blocks with a mouse on a digital device is
yeah.
going to be as impactful as doing it with your hands,
Yes,
using all of those senses. Children need three-dimensional experiences, not two.
right.
Um, but sadly, a lot of teachers have been told, pack up the blocks, put away
Yep.
the housekeeping center, the dramatic play stuff,
Hmm.
um, and blocks seem terribly old-fashioned to a lot of people, I'm sure, when we
Yeah,
all
it's
these,
that's
blinking lights and billions of bits of information coming at us on
yeah.
digital devices.
And it's so easy. I think culturally, I think this is a cultural thing. We just assume if it's technology, it's automatically smart. You know what I mean? Like if a child
Yeah.
can, if I've got a 2-year-old who can expertly navigate my the iPad and get to all the apps and do all the things, that is a sign of intelligence that we should value more highly than anything else the child is showing us.
Yeah, as you're talking about that, I'm realizing, putting a couple of dots together,
Uh-huh.
parents feel the need for evidence
Mm-hmm.
of what
Mm-hmm.
their children are learning.
Because
And
they feel pressure and judgment too,
oh,
right?
they
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
They do.
Yeah.
They're getting so much
Yeah.
misinformation.
Yeah. And so they're
There's so
looking for
much
this evidence.
competition, you
Yep.
know.
Yep.
Um, and they want the best for their children.
Hmm.
So, they see the 2-year-old doing all of that on the iPad, and that for them is evidence. But there's really, where's the evidence of genius when children are playing,
Right.
I mean,
Building with blocks and
yeah, and
and following their
you
ideas.
can't you can't, give a and I'm just having a brain bubble. You
Yep.
there's no way to grade creativity, imagination, curiosity, wonder,
Hmm.
joy.
Hmm.
We don't assign um importance to that, and even though they're everything that matters.
Right. Yeah.
And so, yeah, they don't see that. They want the worksheets as
Hmm.
evidence.
It's easier to measure. They need easy measurement,
Yeah, and
kind
that,
of. Yeah.
what they're doing on worksheets isn't authentic learning, but
No.
they're not aware of that.
Yeah. And I think, again, this came up in another conversation. Sometimes the things that I see people doing that they're calling playful, um, is just doing that same kind of rote memorization that you do on a
Yeah.
worksheet, but I'm using toys instead of a worksheet. That same kind of sedentary
Yeah, that's not playful.
Yeah,
Or, I
yeah.
mean, like
But we're
being
using counting bears instead of markers on a worksheet or something, so we
a
feel like,
boo-hoo.
yeah, I know, yeah.
I mean,
Those poor counting bears are really my mortal enemy, and they've done nothing to me.
well, I use the example of word comprehension. So on one side you've got the word enormous, and on the other side over here you've got, a giant. And
Uh-huh.
and the child may connect the two,
Yeah,
but it doesn't resonate in the same way becoming a giant.
yeah.
Being
Seeing it, yeah.
enormous does for the child because it imprints it on the body and imprints it in the mind.
Uh-huh. And it's fun
Um,
to do.
and
So
it's
there's the
fun to do.
joy.
And fun and joy are what motivates young children.
Right.
And, as they said in Seinfeld, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. Yeah, but and
Nothing wrong with that.
it does, it's motivating, but we also now know it releases the chemicals in the brain that form those neural pathways that we're also excited about.
Yes. 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 And if we take that away in early childhood, can we ever get that back?
Or it's going to be a little bit harder, a little bit slower
Yeah.
to
I mean, how
reform those
how
things.
early in life do we want them to learn that life is a struggle, that, it's a joyless
Uh-huh.
thing,
Yeah,
yeah.
right? Yeah, it's like I think it's Michael Gramley in the book he wrote called The Great Disconnect, that something about the difference between what we know and what we do.
Huh.
And he's talking about a teacher who is arguing, but she's going to have to do this in kindergarten, so we're going to do it now. And I think he says something like, "Oh yes, I've heard this argument before. Because she might be miserable in the future, we should make sure she's comfortable with misery now."
Oh, my
And
heart.
yeah, I hate it. And this is where I have to say I'm not saying that elementary school teachers are intentionally causing people misery, but the systems that we're all in are really hard on
Yeah.
us and on children.
Yeah. They
And
really are.
uh so of course that's an exaggeration for effect, but we do have to think about when we say, well, they're going to have to do this eventually.
Well,
Does
yes.
does it have do we get them ready by making it do it before they're ready, or do we really build up what we know they need now so that when they get to that thing,
Well, the
they're
reason the
quote unquote ready?
one-year-olds were being, it was an instructional coach who reached out to me and said, "You won't believe what I just saw."
Hmm.
And when asked why the one-year-olds were required to sit for 20 minutes
Hmm.
memorizing letters and numbers, it was to get them ready for the two-year-old classroom.
Yeah,
And I mean, classroom and ones and twos, I'm sorry, those terms jar in my mind.
right. Yes. I
Um,
use them, but yes, yes.
yeah. Um, we're always let's keep them in the present.
Right.
Let's respect and honor and love and enjoy
Yeah.
what they're offering, who they are as
Yeah.
who they are right now.
Yeah.
Um, uh,
And why don't we tell that 2-year-old classroom, if I'm the 1-year-old teacher, why is it not the norm for me to tell this 2-year-old teacher all the things I know about this child and what they are already competent with
yeah,
and what they need, and then we're pushing that up instead of having everything pushed down
yeah,
onto us. I mean, I've seen infant rooms start, 9, 10-month-old babies sleeping on cots at certain times of the day because in the toddler room, they're not going to have a crib. It starts so it's pushed down to the
push,
earliest
push,
that we
push,
have
push,
children.
push. Yeah. And when we talk about sitting,
Yeah.
people don't realize, because who tells them, I mean, they haven't studied motor
Exactly. Yeah.
development,
Yeah.
let alone child development, that sitting still is an advanced form of balance,
Hmm.
and that it requires a whole lot of other stuff to
Hmm.
get there,
Hmm.
somewhere maybe around age 6, right? So,
Yeah.
um, the idea, well, they're going to have to sit when they're
Right.
6, so we might as well start them sitting when they're 1
Yeah.
is, you know,
And it puts a lot of stress on their developing spine and their
uh,
developing systems
yeah.
to have them do it. This is a whole other episode we're starting, Ray.
Yeah,
This
I
is a
know,
whole
I
other
know, I know. The
conversation.
proprioceptive and vestibular systems that require the swinging and the spinning and the
Yeah.
rolling and all of that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, uh, if you had to, I'm going to close this out by letting you just make a pitch. Like, why should people read this, what's your hope? I'm going to rephrase it. What's your hope for people who read this?
Oh, my hope is that they will take this information and not just use it
Hmm.
with the children, but use it to make the case for why children need to play, why they
Hmm.
need all these different kinds of play. There are
Hmm.
12 of them in the book, and
Yeah.
certainly there were others. But I mean, if it's a matter of advocating with administrators or and there was, there's a woman I know who retired after 30 something years of teaching kindergarten and was doing it the good old fashioned way for the
Hmm.
first many years. And then a new administration came in and started handing out ditto sheets,
Hmm.
um, packets of them. And she said, I will use one of these if you will agree to let me keep doing things my way and show you that it works. And she did.
Oh,
You
wow.
know?
Uh-huh.
So, and she was able to finish out her career, doing things the good old fashioned way.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Um, so yeah, whether it's advocating with, and let's just start with parents, helping parents
I
understand.
think that's key, right? I
Yeah,
think they're the ones we have to change and reach.
yeah, yeah. And there are so many of them, and they are voters, and so
Hmm.
they impact the policies as well.
Hmm.
Um, and when we think about it, all of those play-based learning environments that have become academics oriented did so because the parents were asking it of them,
Right.
right? So if they go the other way, I mean, they have
Hmm.
all this power.
Right.
If we can convince them that play is what their children need more than anything
Hmm.
to become brilliant and successful and happy
Happy.
in the future. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Yeah. All
So
right.
I guess what I hope is that it makes a difference. I
Hmm.
just
Yeah.
keep wanting to make a difference.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. Well, thank you so much
Thank you.
for coming on. Do you want to tell people how to find you? I mean, I know you're on some social
Just
media,
yeah,
but you have a website.
raypica.com.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and right now, and hopefully not by the time this airs, I am locked out of my business account,
Oh no, I
my
hate
business
that.
profile on Facebook. So
I
if you're
keep
going to
hearing
invite
that
me
happen.
to, really? If
Yeah.
you're going to invite me to one of those wonderful Saturday get-togethers, I won't see it.
Oh, okay. That's good to know. I'll have to send you a separate message
Please
somehow.
do. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, yeah. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
raypica.com gives you everything and more that you ever wanted to
Yeah.
know about me and
Yeah.
my online courses and all of that stuff. So
Yeah. All right, great. Thank you.
thank you.
And thanks everybody for listening to another episode of That Early Childhood Nerd.